In this video for the Advanced SQL series, we're going to look at an inline subquery example. We will be working with the HR schema for this particular video. So we'll do an inline subquery. An inline subquery is in the from clause of the outer query. It's a temporary table that's generated in the from clause. It can be assigned a table name through a table alias, and if you're using any other tables in the from clause, you will need to join this particular temporary table with at least one of the other tables. And it's possible often to do a solution without using subqueries, but subqueries are a nice way to decompose a problem statement, and it can make it easier to debug if you're having some questions about the output. So let's suppose we want to see the top 5 employees in terms of salaries, and this is dealing with the HR schema. If I do a SQL statement that gives me the employee ID and name, salary, and job title using employees and jobs, and then ordering it by salary in descending order. In descending order, we see that Stephen King is being paid the highest amount, the largest amount, followed by Lex DeHaan, and so on and so forth. But I just want to see the top 5. So we also see in this example how to use Rownum, which is a way to number the output in an SQL statement. It can also be used to restrict how many rows you want to display. So here, just looking at the previous, this is the query without doing a sort by salary, we can see that we're getting Rownum, and it corresponds to what you see when you use the run statement in SQL Developer. So the SQL Developer run statement gives you the Rownum, but we're using it explicitly in the select clause because we want to use it to filter output. So in this example, if I were to add to this order by salary descending order, what you'll see is that the Rownum that we have in the select clause is scrambled. We are not getting the output that we want. That's because the rows are numbered before they are sorted. So what we'll do is use an inline query to produce a sorted list. So we'll have a temporary table that's already been sorted, and then we'll number that temporary table output and use Rownum to filter and limit output to the top 5 rows. So I have in the from clause a query basically that you saw previously as the single query, not as part of the outer query. And what we have is a listing of employees ordered by salary in descending order, largest to smallest. Then in the outer query, I'm simply referencing the columns from this temporary table. So I'm using ID as a column alias in the subquery, employee as a column alias in the subquery, and so forth. But in the outer query, I'm saying where Rownum is less than or equal to 5. And so as a result, I will see the top 5 people from the inner query list in terms of salary earned. And just as a side note, both the inline query in the from clause and the type 1 subquery, they produce a temporary data set before the outer query executes, so they can be run and tested independently of the outer query. So why don't you try doing the same solution we have here but using a type 1 subquery. So what we've covered here is the use of an inline subquery in the from clause. And once again, subqueries are a useful way to decompose a problem and design SQL solutions. We've also seen how to use Rownum and use it to filter output.